Today is February 13th, 2019. I am interviewing Mr. Marolda at the Gilbert School in Winsted, Connecticut. The interviewer is Caleb Goodell, a student of the Gilbert School. Also present is the camera operator, Mr. Morgan, also a teacher at the Gilbert School. Please state your full name and date of birth.
Theodore R. Marolda, M-A-R-O-L-D-A, May 6, 1923.
And the city and state which you live.
That's Connecticut.
Which
Winsted, Connecticut.
Okay. Which ward did you serve?
World War II.
What was your branch of service?
Marine Corps.
What was your highest rank?
Gunny Sergeant.
And generally speaking, what locations did you serve?
I served in the South Pacific on Guadalcanal, New Guinea, and Cape Gloucester. That was Cape Gloucester was in the Rabaul, big Japanese naval base on Rabaul.
Okay, and what was a gunny sergeant?
Gunny Sergeant is 3 stripes and 2 underneath, 5 stripes. That's a gunny sergeant.
What was your job?
My job was in amphibian tanks, and I think it's in the record there that I put down that I was a crew member.
Okay. So, did you enlist or were you drafted?
No, I enlisted.
You enlisted.
I enlisted the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I enlisted that day.
And Mr. Marolda, why did you choose to enlist?
Well, because it's a little story there. I was on my way to work, and I had a 1936 Ford. I was driving to work, and it took about 10 minutes to get to work to Torrington. And I turned on the radio in my little car, and I heard that the I never heard of Pearl Harbor. Well, anyway, they broke in the program and said the Japanese are bombing Pearl Harbor, and I thought it was another radio show. Because Orson Welles' Wars of the Worlds, that was just a year before, and so I thought it was just a story. So they kept breaking in on the program, their ships are being blown up, and then I realized it was true. So when I got to work, I run into my friend Phil DeLube from East Canaan, Connecticut. And I says, Phil, I'm going to go enlist tomorrow. And Phil says, oh, not me, I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to make big money. It comes the time to check out of work. Phil comes to me, I'm coming with you. So we went to Waterbury and we joined the Marine Corps. We actually told them, we took our physical. We were so worried they may not accept us here. I think they would have taken a corpse if we were enlisting at that time. Well, anyway, we passed the physical and everything, and we told them we didn't want to go until after the holidays, Christmas and New Year's. And they said, okay. Then they sent us to Springfield, and we signed up for 4 years. And then on a train, they sent us down to Paris Island. And on the way down, we had no idea what Marine Corps training was because there was no TV then, there was nothing, no movies. And everybody knows the Marine Corps training is pretty rough. But we had no idea. We thought we were going to a Boy Scout camp. And we learned right away that it was no Boy Scout camp. It was pretty bad. So we went through that. And you want to go on to, I don't know what you...
why did you choose the Marines?
I don't know, we were thinking about the Navy, and because this Phil DeLue with me, his brother served in the Navy for about 10 years before the war, and they were saying how they have good food in the Navy, and you're on a ship, and you're not in dirty trenches. But anyway, we decided to sign up in the Marine Corps.
So, what were the first days like when you got to boot camp?
Very bad. We went down and 3 drill instructors got on a train, and they called us all kinds of names. We were the poorest recruits ever entered the Marine Corps. Where'd they find you? From maybe the city dump? And get on your hands and knees and clean up this dirty, filthy mess here. And on and on and on went. And we were just dumbfounded. We just couldn't believe it. They put us on trucks and drive us through the gate onto Paris Island. And,
Mr. Bramble, please call 1412. Mr. Bramble, please call 1412.
And on the way in, all the fellows that were there called us, "You'll be sorry," and we were. They brought us in, made us strip all our clothes off and throw it in a pile. I said, "I can't send those clothes. It's my brother's brand new suit. I got to send it home." Throw them in a pile. So we're nude, and they come out and spray us to kill all environment. Because in those days, we had a lot of farmer boys coming in all over New England, and they wanted to kill all. If you had lice, they wanted to kill all the lice. So then we were all nude, and we walked down a line, and they gave us clothes, and they judged by your size what size to give you. And we went to boot camp, and we started with that. The training was very, very hard. A little footnote to that. Years later, on one of the campaigns, we were loading up for another landing, and I heard this voice, and it was the drill sergeant. He was a World War I veteran. He was my drill sergeant. So I went over to him and I said, "Sergeant, can I ask you a question?" He says, "Go ahead." I said, "Why in the world was the so brutal, and why was it almost cruel treatment for you?" I said, "Why?" He says, "We're trying to break you mentally and physically. We're trying to break you." I said, "But why break us down?" He said, "Because it's better to break you down here than in combat, and you could cause a lot of Marines to be killed." So after that, I was proud I got through boot camp. Yeah. Then after boot camp, they sent us to New River, North Carolina, and we were supposed to train. We were taking in our amphibian tanks. Amphibian tanks are land at sea tanks. By the way, it was the first amphibian tank in the world, and a Marine colonel told me recently that because of the first amphibian tractor battalion, that changed the history of the Marine Corps. That's how important it was, because we were the first. So we were training there for a short period of time, and they sent us to, that was New River, North Carolina. They had no facilities for us, and we had to put up tents. And being in an amphibian tank, we had to be near the water. So it was a lot of swamps in that area. So it wasn't very pleasant, but we trained there for a short period of time. Then we were ordered to Virginia, and we got on a transport, which was again not ready for troops. It was a Manhattan, a luxury liner out of New York City, and we were. In fact, there's some literature in that paper about it that we were put down in the hold of a ship, and they had to make they welded beds on the wall 4 high, and we were on that ship from the day we got on. It was 31 days. We went through and at this time there was still seeking. The German submarines were really very active in the Atlantic, and we were escorted down through North Carolina, South Carolina, and down into the Panama Canal. And we were told when we sailed out, we went unescorted. We had nobody, no ships. We went one ship all the way, and they didn't tell us where we were going. So we were in the hold, and during the sunrise and sunset, they would lock us in with these big doors. Because in our compartment, because if we were hit there, we're dead, but the rest of the ship wouldn't fill with water. So sunset, and for about an hour and a half in the morning, for an hour and a half in the afternoon, we were locked in. So it was very crowded. There was 8,000 Marines and about 1,000 sailors on that one ship. And they told us if somebody fell off, they couldn't stop for him. He was lost. And then just before we got to New Zealand, they told us where we were going. Wellington, New Zealand. And it was a beautiful country, New Zealand. Really, the city was built almost like a punch bowl. On the shore, and then it went up, beautiful houses all on these hills up above. And we set up camp there for 30,000 Marines. And we were very, very pleased to be in New Zealand because the veterans, the Australian and New Zealand men, were fighting in North Africa. So all these young ladies had nobody to go out with. And you know, the Marines volunteer, so we volunteered our service to help these poor damsels, you know. And it was funny because when you dated a girl, she came out in an evening gown. Even if you're going to the movies or restaurant, they have beautiful evening gowns. That's how they went. So anyway, we were supposed to train there for 6 months. It didn't happen. A bomber out of Australia found that the Japanese were building a huge airfield on Guadalcanal. If they completed that airfield, that would mean that the Australia and New Zealand would have been occupied. There was nobody there to protect them. There was nothing there, and they would have, within months, they would have been occupied by the Japanese. So it's an emergency thing. They told us my battalion, they said, go to the docks, right down to the docks. We had 30 transports. And when they load up a transport in the United States, it's haphazard. After all, they're just bringing supplies in. But when you go in combat, you have to, all those ships, every carton, everything on the ships had to be unloaded on the docks and reloaded for combat. And it wasn't too bad. At least it was fairly warm climate, but it was raining. So can you imagine all the cardboard boxes? There was food and especially the cereal boxes all fell apart. Anything that was in a cardboard box was all over the decks. And we had a hell of a mess. And they were in a hurry to get it. They didn't want the Japs to complete that airfield. So we asked the officers asked the Australian soldier, longshoremen, very strong union there. Their nation's going to be occupied, and it wouldn't work. We wanted to put 8-hour shifts for the longshoremen. Oh no, we only work 8 hours, and we have to go home at night. And we said, desperately, we need help. And so General Vandergriff ordered a couple of squads of Marines. He says, fix your bayonets and drive these guys off the docks. And they did. And he said, if you come back, we'll shoot you. And they never came back. But here's their country going to be occupied. They won't work. So anyway, we got the ships all loaded. And we were supposed to have and we never once had a full division landing. It was just because everything was rush. And one of our officers asked the general if, we didn't have the training we're supposed to. We're supposed to train in New Zealand for 5 or 6 months. And he says, you're going to get on the job training. So we landed. We weren't told where we were going. We had no idea what island or what it was, and we found out the day before it was Guadalcanal. And just before we landed, we had to make our last will and testament. We've had signed papers, and I signed $10,000 insurance policy. You had to name somebody. Of course, I named my mother. And then we had lined us up, Catholics, Jews, Protestants. We had a minister, rabbi, and they would hear your confession, especially the Catholics. And gee, I thought it was great because you could, you didn't have to talk to the priest at all. You just said it to yourself. Gee, I said, this is great. Now I won't have to lie so much. So anyway, we went and we landed on Guadalcanal, and it was fairly easy landing. We had very few casualties. Captured the airfield the second day, and then the thing turned sour. That afternoon, 40 Japanese torpedo bombers come in and flew over, and they sank a couple of our ships. And we were unloading. Once we loaded the troops, our amphibian, we could take about 20, 25 men and